I'm pleased to be here this morning, marking up the fiscal year 2025 Interior Appropriations Act with Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro, Subcommittee Ranking Member Pingree, and the members of the subcommittee staff. Let me take just a minute to say that this is the last subcommittee markup for Mr. Kilmer. Yeah, he didn't know. He didn't, who has decided not to run again. But I wanted to just tell you, Derek, you've been a valuable asset in this committee, and we appreciate having you here and all that you've added to this. And I've enjoyed working with you. Chairman Cole, we are glad to welcome you back to the Interior Subcommittee in your role as the full committee chair, as the first Native American to ever chair the Appropriations Committee, first Oklahoman to ever chair the Appropriations Committee. You've made it your legacy in Congress to advocate for Indian country. I have no doubt that you will continue advancing this critical bipartisan effort as chairman. There is no one better for the job, and we appreciate the work you have done to get us to this point in the appropriations process. I also want to thank Chairwoman or Ranking Member Rosa DeLauro, but she's not here yet, so I'll save it. I also want to recognize Ranking Member Pingree. She's been a wonderful partner, and I appreciate her commitment to the subcommittee's issues, and I look forward to continuing our work together to move the Interior bill forward. Lastly, I want to thank the members on the committee and the staff of both sides of the aisle for their work and contributions to this bill. The fiscal year 2025 Interior bill provides $38.48 billion in spending, which is $72 million below the enacted level and $4.4 billion below the President's request. I have consistently said that I refuse to balance the budget on the back of the tribes, so I am proud that this bill makes strong investments to further the federal government's trust and treaty commitments to the tribes. The bill provides a 14.5% increase for the Bureau of Indian Affairs and a 7.5% increase for the Bureau of Indian Education. This includes robust funding for law enforcement programs including an additional $13.5 million for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Initiative. The Indian Health Service is also increased by $1.6 billion to fully fund current services for key health care programs and cover contract support estimates. The bill also provides over $330 million to permanently address wildfire fighting pay and capacity. The permanent pay fix included in this bill will improve the firefighter recruitment and retention, which is absolutely necessary, and provide financial certainty to the men and women protecting our communities from catastrophic wildfires. To meet our allocation while prioritizing these critical programs, the bill also right-sizes funding for most of the appropriations. For example, the EPA is cut by 20% below the enacted level, with reductions targeted at operating programs and regulatory activities. The bill also includes community project funding for EPA clean and drinking water infrastructure projects. While requests greatly exceeded the funding available for projects, we did our best to provide some funding for all eligible projects, given the dollars will make the difference. Given these dollars will make a difference in the communities across the country. Lastly, in terms of policy provisions in the bill, we rein in the administration's regulatory agenda and promote domestic energy production by halting heavy-handed job-killing EPA regulations, limiting abuse of the Endangered Species Act and ensuring continued access to our public lands, expanding access to hard rock and critical minerals, and requiring oil and gas lease sales. In closing, I'm pleased that this bill focuses spending where it is needed most, makes great strides to address critical needs across Indian country, and permanently fixes wildland firefighter pay, and that it restrains the administration's burdensome regulatory agenda to ensure access to our public lands. I look forward to working with the Ranking Member Pingree and the other members of this committee and of Congress to move the Interior bill toward enactment. Now I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Pingree for her remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your work on the subcommittee this year. I, too, enjoy working with you and also appreciate Chairman Cole and your work, and thank you for being with us today. Derek, I'll have words for you later. I don't know who allowed you to retire, but we are going to miss you greatly. Speaking about the bill, climate change is clear and present danger, and experts agree that we must take bold action to avoid major, irreversible catastrophe. Just last week, 1/5 of all Americans were under extreme heat advisories, with record-breaking temperatures felt across my home state of Maine, which is very unusual. It seems like every year when we meet to mark up this bill, there's a new record broken for extreme heat. So I am greatly disappointed and frustrated by the bill before us that completely disregards the reality of a warming planet and ignores the need for us to do more, not less. As the 5th National Climate Assessment confirms, the effects of human-caused climate change are already far-reaching and worsening across every region of the United States. With that understanding, cutting funding for the Environmental Protection Agency by $1.8 billion, or 20%, is irresponsible and severely impacts needed investments in environmental justice, enforcement, and climate change. If we are going to preserve the health of our environment and our economic well-being, we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase our efforts to respond to and mitigate against harmful climate impacts. The bill also slashes funding for land management agencies. The National Park Service alone is cut by $210 million. This cut will mean fewer park rangers and preserve the park's natural and cultural fewer park rangers to protect and preserve the park's natural and cultural resources, and it will mean a negative impact on the visitor experience. Funding for cultural institutions, such as the Smithsonian and National Gallery of Art, are also significantly reduced. The arts have an incredible value as a positive tool for economic development, education, and community building, and I will strenuously oppose these cuts in the final spending agreement. There are areas of bipartisanship, though, and I want to commend Chairman Simpson's work on wildland fire. And I see we're joined by several people who work on wildland fires. Thank you so much for your service, the dangers that you take on, and the way that you preserve our communities. This bill includes authorizing language necessary for the administration to carry out its permanent pay reforms for federal wildland firefighters, and it provides an additional $330 million to support the effort. This is something we agree on wholeheartedly, and I am so pleased that the bill addresses this important issue. I'm also proud of our work to address treaty and trust obligations on a bipartisan basis. I want to acknowledge and thank Chairman Cole for adjusting the interior allocation to accommodate the $739 million increase required as a result of the Supreme Court decision on contract support costs. These costs will continue to rise, and I hope we can work together to make these funds mandatory. Unfortunately, once again, the House Republicans have loaded the bill with wildly unpopular policy riders. This year, they've included a whopping 83 poison pill riders that cripple environmental protection, undermine climate change policies, and add to the national deficit. The riders in this bill give an open invitation to exploitive oil, gas, and mineral leasing by blocking rules that protect our public lands and resources, dictating the timing of offshore and onshore lease sales, overriding protections for preserving pristine water and undisturbed Arctic landscapes, and even prohibiting implementation of recommendations to improve mining on public lands. Further, the bill includes 13 endangered species-related riders that hinder efforts to save iconic species and apex predators, maintain healthy ecosystems that benefit us all, and clarify regulations for stakeholders that help our economy grow. And sadly, the bill also contains numerous discriminatory riders targeting millions of American citizens, which have proven so divisive in earlier markups. The majority of Americans support the United States taking steps to become carbon neutral by 2050, and they support taking responsibility for future generations. The austere and irresponsible cuts in this bill do not align with American values. We need to rise to this challenge and not squander the opportunity to make the planet better for our children and grandchildren. I want to thank Ranking Member DeLauro for her tireless efforts on the committee, Chair Cole, the staff on both sides of the aisle. Unfortunately, I oppose this bill, and I urge my colleagues to oppose the bill, and I yield back.
I now recognize the full committee chairman, Mr. Cole.
Thank you very much. And before I move into my prepared remarks, this room always makes me very reflective. This was my first subcommittee and my favorite subcommittee as a freshman on the full committee. And frankly, I learned how to be first to go to appropriator and then hopefully a decent chairman, because I had my friend Chairman Simpson's tutelage as then the ranking member, and Norm Dix, who was just such a spectacular chairman of this subcommittee, and of course Derek's predecessor. So I never walk into this room without thinking I'm coming back to my kindergarten classroom, where I had really good teachers that taught me what to do and how to behave. So, Chairman, thank you for your friendship and your mentorship over many, many years. I do believe the chairman, and of course I had the good fortune of working with the ranking member when she first arrived in this committee, and with Ms. McCullum as well, and Derek. These are some of our very best appropriators come through this committee, and I just admire you enormously. Second, I'm going to join and anticipate Ms. Pingree's remark a little bit. Derek, we are going to miss you. I mean, this is the committee I found out you're really a good guy, because you were always on the right side of Native American issues, and we appreciate your consistent bipartisanship throughout your career, frankly, across the whole range of issues. We don't have a better member in the Congress, in my view, and we don't have anybody we're going to miss more than you. So I don't know what you're going to do next, but I certainly wish you well, and you've made a lot of friends here. With that, let me get into my prepared remarks. Chairman Simpson, thank you. Thank you to Ranking Member Pingree and Ranking Member Delora of the full committee, and to all the members of the subcommittee for being with us today. I do want to add one thing. The ranking member was kind enough to mention the allocation. It mostly went up because she came over to me on the floor and said, give us more money, we'll spend it on Indians. And I said, oh, and wildfires. I said, okay, we'll find a way, and fortunately we're able to do that. But I know you're on different sides of this bill this morning. That's appropriate, but I also am very confident the two of you, as you always have, will find common ground and we'll arrive at a good conclusion. This morning our work continues with the fiscal year 2025 Interior and Environmental Appropriations Act. This bill supports the conservation and good stewardship of our nation's natural, cultural, and environmental resources, from the protection of forests and recreational hunting and fishing to U.S. energy and mineral independence. The measure before us today impacts vast aspects of American life. It also advances the federal commitment to honor our trust and treaty responsibilities to American Indian and Alaskan Native communities. Essential resources are delivered with a total funding level of $38.4 billion. This allocation marks a reduction from fiscal year 2024 enacted level and meets the top line imposed by the law under the Fiscal Responsibility Act. We've taken meaningful steps to reduce spending on lower priority programs and direct funding where it is most needed, Indian country and wildland fire management. I'm particularly pleased that the bill prioritizes funding for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which includes a 34% increase for law enforcement programs. Critical health care programs at the Indian Health Services are also increased by 23%. Further, it contains several provisions to rein in the administration's burdensome regulatory agenda to protect American jobs and to lower energy costs. We also strengthen our national security with policies that promote domestic energy production and expand access to critical minerals. I thank Chairman Simpson, Ranking Member Pingree, and the majority and minority staff for their hard work. I look forward to consideration of this bill today. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Before I yield to the ranking member, you weren't here for my opening remarks, so I saved my thanks to you. And while we're oftentimes on opposite sides of the issues and stuff, I've always enjoyed working with you, and I think we do it respectfully and try to understand each other's positions. So I appreciate the work that you've done, and it's great to work with you. I now recognize the full committee ranking member, Member DeLauro, for her statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I too really treasure the relationships, etc. We are oftentimes in disagreement, but it's not disagreeable, as we want to say. It really is a pleasure to work with you, and I thank you very, very much for your kind comments. And I thank you this morning, and I thank Ranking Member Pingree for the work that you've both done on this issue. And I want to say a thank you to the subcommittee staff, both the majority and the minority, and on our side, especially Rita Culp and Jocelyn Hunn. I can just say about my colleague Derek Simpson that he knows the inside joke. I don't have time to explain it to everybody, but Mr. Recompetes here is always. But there's one thing, and he's done many, many things, but I have his understanding of this institution and its ability to be a transforming effort in people's lives, I think has been a hallmark of the time that you have spent here, Derek, and the work that you have done to really help to make a difference in how this institution runs and what we should be thinking about, how we should move forward. And you're someone who came knowing why you're here and understanding the power of this great institution that we are all blessed to serve in. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. The departments and agencies funded in the Interior and the Environment Bill ensure that our air is safe to breathe, our water is safe to drink, our national parks and other public lands are maintained and accessible to the American people, and that our nation's unique and iconic flora, fauna, landscapes, ecosystems are preserved for the sake of our health, safety, and enjoyment for generations to come. But rather than making sound investments to protect the air and water we consume, to preserve our national parks, and ensure the environment we all share and live in remains clean and protected, the majority's bill takes the side, in my view, of polluters and climate science deniers, jeopardizing public health and safety, hindering our responses to climate crises, and endangering rural and low-income communities. The majority cuts the EPA's Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Funds by $678 million. This is the water we drink and bathe in and we cook in, a basic life necessity that we have a simple obligation to protect for the American people. And the bill zeroes out funds for environmental justice, worsening the impacts of environmental discrimination for rural and poor communities. Every American deserves to live in a healthy, clean, and in a safe environment. But this bill abandons those who are most affected by environmental destruction and climate change. By cutting efforts to reduce carbon emissions, slashing community resiliency programs, requiring fossil fuels lease sales on public lands while prohibiting clean energy projects, the bill unwinds our response to climate change and promotes dirty energy, taking the side of fossil fuel companies and those who deny the scientific reality rather than address what is the escalating risk to our economy and national security presented by changing climate and growing number of extreme weather events. The impacts of climate change are deadly and costly and can be felt in communities around the world, including in each of our districts. We cannot put our head in the sand and act like climate change will go away. I proudly worked across the aisle to protect our environment and public lands for Americans past, present, and future, and disappointed to see the majority abandon their commitment to conserving America's lands and natural resources. I do believe that national parks are America's best idea, but sharp cuts to the National Park Service mean fewer seasonal employees and furloughing existing permanent employees, making it more difficult and cumbersome for our constituents to visit and enjoy our nation's crown jewels. Cuts to the Smithsonian Institution will likewise curb Americans' access to the world's largest museum, education, and research complex. To top it all off, the majority has included some 83 new policy riders that put endangered species at risk, damage the environment, and curb clean energy development, hinder the work of the Environmental Protection Agency, and discriminate against millions of Americans. The ramifications of this bill would reach every corner of the country. It damages our public lands, it promotes dirty energy, jeopardizes biodiversity, and obstructs our response to a climate crisis. Democrats are ready to talk and to be at the table and will work to pass legislation that protects our environment, our public lands, and health and safety of the American people. Look forward to working together with the majority, but it is time to govern. I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. Any other member have remarks? Hearing none, before I ask Mr. Amidei to make a motion, I want to echo what our Ranking Member, Ms. Pingree, said. Y'all wildland firefighters, thank you for the job you do. It's incredibly dangerous. When I first got on this committee, I was I had a new chief of staff, and we were out in Idaho, and there was a wildfire up above Salmon, Idaho. Ended up burning about 1.8 million acres. And my chief of staff was driving over to Blackfoot, where I lived at the time, and I called him on the phone and said, let's go fight a wildfire. And he kind of said, what? You want to do what? I said, let's go. I know the forest supervisor up there. Let's call him and say we want to come up. We don't, not going to bring press, cameras, or anything else like that. Just treat us like you would if we were really a firefighter and what it takes. Why does it take 5,000 people to fight this wildfire? Because there were like 5,000, you know, not only just wildfires, but the ancillary personnel that goes along with it and everything. We wanted to spend a couple days there. And I tell you what, I learned more about fighting wildfires and the job that you all do during those 2 days than anything else I could have done. Press was mad at me because I didn't tell them we were coming. But, you know, most politicians go up there, take a picture with the fire in the background and everything, and then leave. But this was very, very interesting. And, again, thank you for all the job that you do. I understand no members have amendments today. And I turn to Mr. Amadei for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. I ask unanimous consent that staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the bill and the report without objection, so ordered. Copies of the bill and report with the technical and conforming changes will be delivered to all full committee member offices no later than 3 business days before the full committee hearing. Subcommittee now stands adjourned.
Thank you. Hope it wasn't true.